Let's crack open a beer and share some thoughts.
Welcome to Opinions, and I'm here with Andrew Walton, who is the head brewer here at the Goose Island Brewpub in Shoreditch. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And we're here to celebrate the annual release of a very special beer. So, do you want to tell us what it is that we've got in our glass in front of us, as well, which is quite an exciting moment.
Yeah, it's very lucky. This is a little jump in the gun to touch, but it's the release of 2019 Bourbon County Stout, which is a bourbon barrel-aged imperial stout from Goose Island Beer Company in Chicago.
Okay, shall we have a little taste?
Yeah, let's do it.
Of it. Cheers. Thank you for inviting us down today.
It's a ferocious beer.
Oh, yeah. It is. And in a way, it tastes its ABV, but at the same time, it's so very, very soft as well. And that dangerously soft, you could say. You could drink a lot of that and be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, well, at 15.2%, I would encourage you to share a bottle if you're going to crack one open. But it is an extremely balanced beer. I got the opportunity to brew a batch of it when I was in Chicago 2 summers ago, and sort of looking at that brew sheet, it sort of makes sense why, even though it is a fairly sweet, there's still about 10 degrees Plato of sugar left in this beer. There's such a large component of roasted barley in it that sort of balances out that sweetness and the sweetness that you're getting from the bourbon barrels as well. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the 2019 release. What's so special about it this year? Because I know it kind of changes a little bit every year, doesn't it?
The recipe has largely remained the same from the first time they brewed it, a little over 20 years ago. But the 2019 version, it's a mix of 3 different barrels this year for a change. So it's Heaven Hill, Buffalo Trace, and Wild Turkey. Each batch will be blended from many hundreds of barrels. So you're going to get a slight drift between each different one. For me this year, it's gone into the barrel a little bit sweeter. So I find the 2019 to be a little bit more full-bodied than perhaps the 2018 was. The flip side of that is, for me, there's lots of coconut in this beer, a huge amount of brown sugar, and then sort of other flavors that are characteristic of bourbon. Your vanilla, a little bit of char from the barrels, baker's chocolates, touch of nuttiness, and again that roast character from the barley. So it's a very complex beer. We like to sort of joke at the brewery that you could open up a bottle of Bourbon County, pour yourself a glass, have a couple sips, go on vacation for 2 weeks, and then come back to it. And it's going to have changed a little bit, but it's a very, it's a incredibly robust and highly drinkable beer.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I'm sitting here sipping it while you're telling me all about it, and I'm thoroughly enjoying every sip. Now you mentioned there that for the first time it's been a blend of barrels. Is it normally then that it's just the one barrel that goes into the release of this stout?
It will generally be a blend of barrels. This time it's the first time I think they've used 3 different barrels for it, but by and large it's always going to be Heaven Hill, and I think Wild Turkey was the one that they introduced this year to the mix. We've had a long partnership with a couple distilleries down in Kentucky, and we are able to go down there and taste the bourbons and occasionally select the barrels that we get out of it. So it's we just sort of take the best of what they have for us. Generally, the barrels are going to be, our spec is a minimum of 4 years old. That's sort of the borderline for what can be considered a very good bourbon or a higher quality bourbon.
Yeah.
They're emptied, and we're generally filling them within 2 weeks of them being emptied, so the barrels are still quite wet. So that translates to maybe 5 to 7 liters of bourbon that's still inside the wood, still inside the barrel when we add the beer to it. So it's immediately transforming the character of the beer the second it goes in there.
And how long does the beer typically sit inside one of those barrels once you put it in? Because I don't imagine it's a quick thing. I think it sits there for a while.
So we obviously fill a lot of barrels. The barrel warehouse is 133,000 square feet, filled to the brim with Bourbon County. So on average between 9 and 14 months. So each blend will balance out at about 12 months in the barrel. The warehouse itself is lightly climate controlled. Chicago is a very good environment for barrel aging beer just because they have very hot summers and very cold winters. So what this means is it forces the barrels themselves, as they sort of heat up and cool down, to expand and contract. and that in turn forces the beer sort of in and out of the wood, like into the deepest recesses of the wood. So you're getting that oak character, that char character, the vanilla character that is like, you know, such a big part of bourbon, of American oak, of, you know, the barrel making process.
And it's been going for a few years now, so started in 97, was it, the first
It was earlier than that, 93, I want to say. Yeah. So it was first brewed as the 1000th batch at the original Goose Island Clybourne Brewpub. Brewmaster was Greg Hall at the time, who was John Hall, the founder of Goose Island's son. They were coming up on their 1000th batch. Greg wanted to do something special for it, and he happened to be at a bourbon, beer, and cigar dinner, and was sitting beside a gentleman named Booker No. Booker No was a legendary figure in bourbon making. He was the master distiller for a long time for Jim Beam. And over the course of this dinner, they got to chatting, and Greg knew that he needed to get his hands on some of these bourbon barrels. Booker, for in his turn, was kind of excited to have like a young brewer from Chicago who was fired up about, you know, bourbon and what they were doing down in Kentucky. So a few weeks later, 5 bourbon barrels, Jim Beam barrels, turned up at the Clybourne Brewpub. Greg brewed the first batch of this, and in it went for only 5 months the first time. Obviously, they served it at the Brewpub, but, you know, with such a special beer, Greg also decided to submit it to the Great American Beer Festival. At that time, there wasn't a barrel-aged category, so he submitted it in the Russian Imperial Stout category, and they got disqualified because it's not to style, it's too sweet, it's got these vanilla characters, not characteristic of a Russian Imperial Stout, but was largely thought of as the best beer at the festival, and Goose Island's been making it ever since. We first bottled it, I think, in 2005.
Okay. And it's been a massive success, hasn't it, every year? Back sort of when it was first released, you know, scenes of queues outside the brewery, that sort of thing, people scrambling for the bottles. Obviously, as the brewery's grown, the capacity issues maybe not so much these days, more widely available.
Yeah, I mean, it's a balance, right? Because we obviously, the worst thing to do is have someone come in and taste Bourbon County in the brewery and say, where can I get this, and it not being available, right? So there's been investment to ensure that we can, you know, make as much as we can. But again, it's not a very efficient brew to make. You know, it takes 4 turns of the brew house to actually fill a tank in the Chicago brewery, and then they have to shut down for 8 hours to clean the brew house afterwards. So it's a fairly challenging brewing process, to say the least. So we make as much as we can, but obviously there's limitations to that, just given how challenging it is to brew Bourbon County.
And obviously this isn't, you don't just produce the Bourbon County Stout every year. Certainly in the States there are variants that come along with that as well, and we very rarely get to see those in the UK. But talk us through some of the, because you must have tried some of these variants over the years, talk us through some of your particular highlights in terms of those special ones that you've tried.
So last year's of the 2018, the Midnight Orange, the Wheat Wine, and the Bourbon County Bramble, which we'll have on tap here at the Goose Island Brewpub this Friday, were all just real highlights for me. I mostly get excited about sort of the process because I think it sort of speaks to how Goose Island, the brewery, is run, which is it's very brewer driven. So about this time when they're launching the new batch of Bourbon County, each brewer gets to take home a case and, you know, sort of experiment at home with different flavor combinations to come up with these variants. So it's, you know, very much anyone on the brew team can submit an idea, and a guy I worked with 2 years ago, just extracting barrels, brand new to the brew team, actually came up with these sort of proprietors. So these sort of one of the most prestigious variants this year. So it just sort of demonstrates like how democratic Goose Island is sort of as an institution.
And obviously the beer's released every year on Black Friday. Has that always been a thing, or is that something that's started to happen over the last few years as the popularity of Black Friday has increased?
I think it's sort of gone along with the popularity of Black Friday. I don't know off the top of my head when they first did this release on Black Friday, but obviously it's a great time of year for people who are out Christmas shopping. It's a long weekend in the States with folks off celebrating Thanksgiving, so it's a great time to drink a gigantic Imperial Stout.
And just coming back to the 2019 version again, obviously this is available now. It's tasting great right now, which is, I suppose, fresh.
Yeah.
this is just going to get better with age, isn't it?
I think it's delicious right now, but it will change over time.
Yeah.
So there's some like micro oxidation that's going to happen. Sort of the alcohol character of the beer is going to fade over time. Some of the nutty notes are going to sort of cool out a little bit. Your almondy notes might become a little bit more fruity. So the beer is just going to it's not going to change entirely, but it's just going to sort of round off and soften a little bit as you age it. So it's definitely one you can lay down for 1 to 5 years. I've met someone that has every vintage going back to 2005 last night. So
wow.
Yeah.
and now everybody wants to get in on that tasting.
Well,
they?
you know, I tried to get his address, but he wasn't so forthcoming. So.
And what does the future hold for Bourbon County Stout? It's going to continue.
Yeah.
Indefinitely.
Definitely. I mean, it's in my mind, the most important beer that Goose Island makes. So I think it's a matter of just maintaining the high standard of quality that they've set and continue to sort of, push boundaries with the innovations to get the brew team involved, the entire brew team sort of coming up with these variants, and just continuing to make a great beer.
Excellent. Well, listen, Andrew, thank you very much for your time. You're a very busy man this evening. You've got to get back
no worries.
to host the tasting. So, I'm just going to sit and finish off the beer. Cheers. Thank you very much.
Enjoy. Cheers.